Congratulations to Amanda and Brandon. They're having a baby boy. All right, that's neat.
Yeah.
Baby boy. I already know. I know he'll be a state champion in wrestling and at the age of 5 years old. And
He's gonna like musicals and
that's really cool. That's good stuff. And remember, this Wednesday we have no service. You go ahead and spend time with your family, and I think it's great to have good family time. As a matter of fact, from here on in, there's going to be until January. There's going to be no healing room. Okay, so no healing room, and so we're shutting it down. And because I believe that it's important for us to rest, I believe it's important for us to be with our families. You have to have that bond. You have to have that time. And I believe it's important for every church to have that time and say, you know what? Okay, let's rest. A lot of churches speed up during the end of the year. Oh, well, let's do this, let's do that, let's feed this, feed the forward. I'm just, okay, no, wait a second. We have to take care of our own. Amen? Amen. And so I don't believe that it's just, come on, just keep on going, and at the end of it, it's you have no fuel in the tank.
yeah.
And I've seen it. I've seen people just burn out. I don't want you to burn out. I want you to go ahead and I want you to build with your family. I want you to build with your marriages. I even told Gabe and Diaz, I don't want you guys to pick a Sunday. I don't want you guys here. Spend a weekend with each other, revamp, and it's important for all of us. So this Wednesday there's no service, and on Saturdays until January there is no healing room. Amen.
Amen.
All right, let's get into the sermon today. This is our first sermon, and we're talking about marriage. And I'm excited about this lesson. And for those of you that have not taken a chance to sign up for December 8th, you have to sign up. This is our marriage seminar. From here on in, we're building. Every Sunday, we're building up until that day, which is Saturday. And we want to build up, and we want to talk about marriage. And I just believe that marriage does matter. And there's a right way in how to do it, and there's a wrong way in how to do it. But I believe marriage does matter. And so, as a matter of fact, more specifically, on December 8th, we'll be having two major discussions. But one of the major discussions is talking about that part of reconnecting again. What happens, when you're married and here's a good example, you don't feel it no more. I'm going to tell you something. Every couple goes through that. But what happens is that you go through that place of, you just stay there. How do you get back to that? And so we're going to give out some really good material. Right? We're going to talk that day, and it's going to be a really good time. One of the first things that God created was marriage, and He created in the garden. And the thing is that what God creates, what God makes, it's supposed to work. I mean, think about this for just a moment. God was able to go ahead and create the heavens and the earth, and after everything and what He created, He looked back. He says, "That's good." Now, marriage should be in that category, right? Or it's good sometimes. It's good. I'm going to tell you something. Marriage is good. And it's good when you do it God's way. Amen? So let's really dive into this. And I hope you're taking notes. If not, it's on CD. Remember, our CDs are absolutely free. And it's always on our YouTube channel. You can always go back to this. I want you to go over to Matthew chapter 7. Matthew chapter 7. Verse 24. If you're single, this is for you. If you're 16 years old, 18 years old, doesn't matter. Listen to me. This is for you. Amen? Matthew chapter 7, Jesus is talking, and I want you to hear what Jesus has to say. And in verse 24, he says, "Therefore everyone who hears these words of mine and acts upon them may be compared to a wise man who built his house upon the rock." Now I'll tell you something. Now, here Jesus is basically talking that if you want to last, if you want to go ahead and go the long haul, then what you need to do is that you need to take what I'm telling you and apply it. Amen?
Amen.
Let's keep on reading. It says in verse 25, he says, "And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and burst against that house, and yet it did not fall." That's very important. You know, you could take the materials that God has given you, and when you respond to it and act to it, I'll tell you something, you won't fall. Listen to me, you're not going to fall. You have a 100% chance of having a growing and a thriving marriage. Absolutely. A 100% chance if you do it God's way. Let's keep on reading. Verse 26. It says, "And everyone who hears these words of mine," so it's possible to hear the words of God.
Yes.
It says, "but does not act upon them." The only difference between the wise person who actually heard and did, and the person that goes ahead and hears and does not act, there's only one difference. It's not acting. It says, "and does not act upon them will be like a foolish man who built his house upon the sand. The rain descended, the floods came, and the winds blew and burst against that house, and it fell, and great was its fall." Listen to me. We are building to last. I want to build to last. I absolutely want to build to last. And God gives us the essentials. God would never go ahead and create something and not create the parameters of it and how to build it. God would never create something and say, "Okay, well, you know what, just wing it. It's up to you." No, that's not God. God will always go ahead and give a vision. He'll give a sense of a foundation, a sense of establishment. This is how you do it. And marriage was meant to go ahead and last. Marriage was meant to thrive. I mean, think about it. Once again, going back, you know, God created everything. And Him creating everything, He says it was good. It was good. And here's the reason why it was good. Is because it was growing. It was thriving. There was a life. Listen to me. There was life in it. Think about it. When He created the oceans were still thriving. Look, they're still thriving. They're still moving. Right? The Bible says He gave herb-bearing seed. He gave seed. Why? Because seed grows. Now, of all the other things that He created, He also created marriage. Marriage was supposed to not be stuck. Marriage was supposed to grow. And so we want to grow in our marriage, and we want to go ahead and have successful marriages. Because, listen to me, it's going to happen. The winds are going to blow. Yep. Things are going to happen. The flood's going to come. Rain's going to happen. Things are going to happen in life. And here's the thing. You don't want to get hit by the storm to where, oh man, that's it. You stop and you're paralyzed and you stop growing. No, wait a second. I want to learn how to grow through the storm. Doesn't matter what hits you. No, I'm going to grow through this. No, listen to me. Baby, we're going to grow through this. We're going to go ahead and we're going to thrive through this. So I want to be able to have a relationship with God, a relationship with Jesus, that where Jesus goes ahead and gives us the material and says, okay, let's do this together and let's build. Amen? Amen. Let's do that. So this is the reason why I call the marriage as far as building on the rock. So if you're on the rocks, let's get on the rock. Amen? Amen. Let's go ahead and do that. Go over to Ephesians chapter 5. And I'm going to talk to you today, and hopefully I can finish. If not, maybe I'll finish next week. But I want to talk to you about, you know, there's some basic laws, what I call laws, some fundamentals within marriage. These are just laws. You could probably add maybe a couple more, but these are just my fundamental laws, things that I just see within marriage. And here's the thing about law. you have to observe law. Now, it's not based upon your race. It's not based upon how much money you got. It's not based upon if you were born on one side of the tracks. I'll tell you something. Law is law, period. You know, when I went ahead and got my driver's license, I had to learn how to observe the laws. These are just common laws. You break the law, guess what? You're going to jail. You're getting a ticket, right? There's some common laws when it comes to the speed limit, right? There's some common laws when it says, okay, well, you got to wear a seatbelt. So it's not dependent upon once again your ethnicity. It's not based upon how much money you make. Law is law, period. And so in the very same way, in marriage, there are some laws. There are some things that you have to honor. If you don't honor it, guess what's going to happen? You're breaking the law. Here's what happens. You're putting yourself in a position to where there's going to be a breakdown. And you cannot do that. In Ephesians chapter 5, Paul goes on and he's talking about as far as a sense of responsibility. That's really what he's talking about. In Ephesians chapter 5, verse 22 through 32, he's talking about a sense of, this is the God kind of marriage. Or I'll say it like this, the God type of family. And Paul is establishing a sense of order within the family. And he starts off with verse 22. He says, "Wives, be subject to your own husbands as unto the Lord." So he's basically saying, you know what, if you love God and if you love the Lord, then here's what you're going to do. Wives, you're going to be subject to your husbands. Now he goes in verse 23, he says, "For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ also is the head of the church, he himself being the Savior of the body." Now, here's the reason why when I talk about marriage, I basically put more responsibility on the husbands than I do the wives. For this main reason, because it's biblical. This is God's standard type of marriage. And marriage works. Once again, you have a 100% chance of making it in your marriage. Listen to me. I just have to obey the laws of God. I just need to do it God's way. And if you do it God's way, guess what happens? You thrive. You grow. Sometimes marriages can be like a two-headed monster. And it's not supposed to be that. Anything that has two heads is a freak. It's a freak of nature. Right? And so, there's not a woman on the face of this planet that isn't saying, I want that type of man. And the woman said,
Amen. Amen.
Any little pockets of amen. And it's having that, let me just read on, okay? It says, and let's skip over to verse 25. It says, Husbands, love your wives just as. He says, just like. Quincy Jones? You say Quincy Jones? No, not Quincy. He says, just as Christ loved the church, and Lewis says, and gave himself up for her. Here's the reason why. When the guy says, you know what, that's the woman, I'm going to marry her, this is the reason why he gets a ring and he goes ahead and gives it to her. Is because he's basically saying, look what I sacrificed. Look what I did, and I did it for you, baby. And so here's the theme of that marriage. That theme of sacrificial love goes consistently within the marriage. We talked about the 4 types of love a few weeks ago. We talked about the first type of love, which is a sorge or sorge type of love, which means it's a Greek word, which means a family type of love. I love my family, I love my cousins, I love my dad. That's that type of love. Then there's the other type of love, which is a phileo love. It's a Greek word, once again, and it means a brotherly love. Man, I love Gabe. Man, he's my bro. I have a love for him. Then there's the ergos type of love, which is a Greek word, and I'm probably pronouncing it incorrectly, but it basically means a sexual love. A love which we get that word erotic or erotica from. Then there's that type of love which is the agape type of love, which has, listen to me, which has nothing to do with your feelings. Zero. However, this word right here in verse 25 where it says husbands love, love, he's saying, I want you to love your wives with that type of love.
Amen.
Which is that type of love which says, I'm committed to you. Babe, you didn't have stretch marks when we first got married, but now you got stretch marks. Babe, you gained some weight through the pregnancy. You know, and you look a little different, but it doesn't matter. Look at, he said, no, I'm committed to you. Just as Christ was committed to us.
Amen.
And he said, I want you to go ahead and love her in that type of love. I like what Gary Chapman, phenomenal author, he's a great doctor, but he begins to talk about as far as the average honeymoon stage only lasts for about up to 2 years. That's why if you're dating, it's probably a good idea to go ahead and you've got to date at least over a year. I would say up to 2 years. I got married, dating my wife at the 3rd year, around the 3rd year, right below that 3rd year. And here's the reason why. The dating process actually shows you as far as who this person is. But what happens is that in the dating process, guess what's happening? You're going through that romantic type of stage. That feeling, I feel, oh man, I just think about her. She's everything to me. Oh, he's just so funny. But guess what happens? That type of honeymoon stage, the feelings type of stage, it goes away. Now, we'll talk about that on the 8th as far as, there's some very good ways on how to stimulate that within the marriage, what brings that emotional type of love where you hear the thing of, I fell out of love. I thought I loved her, but I fell out of love. I don't love her anymore. And what they're talking about, when you hear that, it's that sense of, I don't feel it like I used to feel it when in the beginning. Amen?
Amen.
So when he's talking about that type of love, he's saying, I'm committed to you. No matter what we go through, no matter how we go through it, I'll tell you something, I'm committed to you. And this is building on the rock. This is how we build. This is a law. This is the type of love that gets the job done. This is the type of love that in 15 years, we're celebrating our 15th wedding anniversary. In 20 years, guess what? Our wedding anniversary is going to take us there, where we'll go further than that. I've said it before, one of the greatest things that you can do for your family and your kids is work on your marriage. That's the truth. One of the greatest things. Because they have married couples, you become the image bearer of what marriage looks like to the next generation.
Amen.
They'll know how to deal with conflict looking at you. They'll know what happens when the rain has hit the house, when the winds blew, when the floods came. They're looking at mom and dad and they're saying, however they build is how I'm going to build. So this is what I say. You want to be the best image bearer possible.
Amen.
Amen?
Amen.
You guys learned something? Good. Go over to 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. First Corinthians chapter 13. In this series, I'll be talking about as far as how to say I'm sorry. There's a genuine way on how to say I am sorry. There's a sense of repentance. I believe recompense. Behind that, depending on the offense that is taken in marriage, but you have to learn this thing. I'm telling you right now. It's very, very good to learn. In 1 Corinthians, Paul is talking about as far as that sense of love, that agape type of committed love, even within the church. So if it's within the church, then it should be within the families. If it's within the families, it should be within the marriage. Amen? In 1 Corinthians chapter 13, look what he says in verse 4. He says, love is feeling. Did you say that? Oh, he didn't say that, huh? He says, love is patient. Love is kind. It is not jealous. Love does not brag. And it is not arrogant. So he's given you a description of what love looks like. Now, this is our house right here. For those of you that are married, this is your house. For those of you that are single, you're going to have a house. And it's important to start learning and getting the material that when you meet that person, you want to build and you want to have a strong house. Amen. Courtesy of Gabriel, thank you for the house. Brandon, you're next week. You can help build that. and so we're learning on how to build. And so it's important that when we're building, look at this is the concern. This is the real concern right here. The real concern is what's right here. That's the concern. So I want to be able to go ahead and build upon the rock. Amen?
Amen.
That's the major concern. So in the description of love, he's talking about this is what love looks like. So if this is what love looks like, this is what it looks like every single day within your marriage. Here's the thing about what I learned about guys, what I learned even about myself. Guys work on a point system. Spiders and jewelry. So I'm good for like a good month, man. I'm good, we had a good overnight at the hotel. You know what, I'm good for at least 2 to 3 days. I can go ahead and focus, do my thing, And here's the thing of what I learned about marriage is that those points run out at midnight. And here's the thing, is that we have to, especially as men, we have to look at marriage as it is a daily function.
Amen.
It's not we just went on that trip to Cancun, and I mean, we're good, right? I mean, we're good for like 2 months, I'm going to go back and spend time with the guys, and then I'll see you later, babe. And then, no, wait a second, wait a second. There's a sense of having that dynamic within marriage where I'm still building, and I'm building every single day.
Amen.
So in the description of your marriage, when I'm reading these verses, this is the description upon the rock on what I'm building on. So in other words, there has to be a sense of patience within your marriage. Must be. Has to be. Just keep on reading. Look, it says in verse 5. It says, does not act unbecomingly, does not seek its own, and this is powerful right there. Does not seek its own. Marriage is horrible for selfish people. It's a nightmare for selfish people. That's why if you're selfish, just stay single. If you're selfish and you're married, well, you better get with it. You're behind. Does not act on its own. In other words, I have to be able to go ahead and look at my spouse and, baby, how are you today? How's everything? I have to be able to look at her concerns, her needs. What is it? Does not act on its own. It says it's not provoked. Does not take into account a wrong suffered. I did this in the beginning of our marriage because I was trying to win in our arguments. And women are just so good at this. Arguing. So good. Because you guys have more of a detail of when you talk. Guys are very mono-minded. We just look at the headlines, right? Women are very detailed. And so I said, you know what? I gotta beat her. And so every little argument that we had where I would go into my phone, into my memo, I would begin to, on this date, at this time, I began to go and say how she was wrong. And then so our next big argument, I went back to my phone. I said, well, look, I'm going to tell you something, Jeanette. Look, on this day, and this time, and this day, and this time, I said, look. And she just went like a wild woman. She just, Look what I did, though. I want you to know what I did. I took the account of the wrong suffered and I put it back in her face. Now, I'm going to tell you something. Listen to me. Does Jesus do that with you? Is Jesus loving us in that very same way? Is he patient with us? Is he kind to us? Does he take a wrong suffer, what you did last week, and say, you know what, I'm putting it back in your face? The Bible says there is therefore no condemnation. In other words, look at marriage should be one of the safest places on the face of this planet.
Amen.
That if your spouse comes to you and says, I'm concerned about this, then this should be a very safe place to go ahead and have that conversation.
Amen.
Amen?
Amen.
Look at verse 6. It says, does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth. Verse 7. This is great. This is the description of love. He says, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. And I'll tell you something, you can endure. Is marriage going to be easy? No, it's not. Will you have your rough patches? Absolutely. But here's the thing. You can bear it though.
Amen.
You can get through it. You can make it happen. And I love this in verse 8. It says, love never fails.
Amen.
And the only reason why it never fails is because if you go ahead and live out the love, the type of committed love, just like this, you'll eventually get to that place where you'll say, you know what? Look at that. Look what happened to us 3 years ago. We got through it. Look what happened to us 2 years ago. We got through it. Look what happened to us when you lost your job and there was no income coming, and you know what? We got through it.
Amen.
And you can look back and say, you know what? It's because of this. There was something that we built on. We built on the rock.
Amen.
Amen?
Amen.
I want you to go to Genesis now. Genesis chapter 2. This is what I call the laws of marriage. What you right now is just more of the intro. I want to get into more of the real building blocks of marriage, and I call these the laws. Now, but listen again. There's the laws of just obeying the law. You know, when it comes to driving. There's also the laws of aviation. The laws of just certain mechanics. You know, you do this in the law of lift. When the law of lift, you know, makes contact with another law, then guess what? You're flying. You're okay, and you literally now broke the law of gravity. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't respect the law of gravity. No, it means that you're actually obeying and listening to the law of gravity because you've got some other things now in function. So there are some things. I think if I had to say it like this, nobody. How can I say it? I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a pastor. I don't care if you're a governor. I don't care. It doesn't matter. If you don't obey as far as these simple laws, you'll fail. As your pastor, if I don't obey this, then I could absolutely end up in divorce. End up in an affair. Absolutely. There are some things that you just have to listen to. You have to obey. You have to do. And let me talk about these laws. And there was I forgot the name of the couple, but they were like the voice in Christianity as far as when it comes to talking about marriage. As a matter of fact, here's what they did. They really prided themselves on a good sense of pride, but they really prided themselves on how many divorces they were able to prevent. And they did this for years. And you see the numbers. You're packed out places where thousands of couples will come together and they were talking about marriage. But here's what happened, is that they end up in divorce.
Oh.
They did. And in his letter, he ends up, running off with the secretary. In his letter to his people, he's saying, I didn't practice what I was speaking. So this is what I'm saying, is that anybody, and I think that's a good sense, because it doesn't matter, even if you're a cop, if you're a fireman, there are certain things that tell you, you know what, you better be on the alert, Because if you don't respect this, then guess what's going to happen? You're going to burn in that fire. There's certain things that you have to do. I'll tell you something. I'm no Superman, and neither are you. So there are some certain things that we have to just go ahead and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to apply this in the story. In Genesis, go to Genesis chapter 2. I think I have that page. Genesis chapter 2. God He just created the heavens and the earth, and He goes ahead and He starts to put together